I was the chief surgeon who separated conjoined twins at this hospital. But when I came to the ER with appendicitis, Nurse Brenda ripped off my hijab and made me walk laps to prove I wasn't faking. After my appendix ruptured and they found out who I was, I discovered Brenda had friends in IT deleting security footage and HR destroying complaints. Now someone's been breaking into my apartment and slashing my tires with notes, warning me to stop investigating. After developing severe abdominal pain, I ended up in the ER of the exact hospital where I'd performed my infamous conjoined twin separation. I walked in doubled over, my hijab damp with sweat, vomit stains on my sleeves from the taxi ride. Nurse Brenda looked up from her computer. Her fingers stopped mid-word. Her eyes traveled from my hijab to my face to the way I clutched my right side. She pointed to the far corner of the waiting room without saying anything. Each step sent lightning bolts through my abdomen. 10 minutes. Later, an elderly white couple walked in and sat in the middle section. The nurse immediately called them forward for triage. I watched 3 more patients arrive after me and get seen first. Each time, her eyes swept past me as though I were part of the furniture. The pain was getting sharper, like someone was twisting a knife in my gut. When she finally looked in my direction, she didn't even glance at my paperwork. "The religious woman with the headscarf in the back," she called out dismissively. The entire waiting room turned to watch me struggle to stand. My legs shook. I had to grip the armrest to pull myself up. She announced loudly enough for everyone to hear that they had special protocols for patients like me. During the assessment, she made me stand even though I could barely stay upright. The room started spinning. I had to lock my knees to keep from collapsing. She acted like I was being dramatic. "Your culture always exaggerates women's normal monthly pain," she said, while barely glancing at my vitals. My temperature was 102 degrees, but she wrote down 95 degrees. I could feel my appendix throbbing with each heartbeat. I tried explaining that I was having severe right lower quadrant pain with rebound tenderness. Classic appendicitis symptoms. She cut me off. "You probably don't even understand what appendicitis is." Then she announced to her colleague that my type had different pain tolerances, so it was hard to assess accurately. When I asked to use the bathroom because I felt like I was going to vomit again, she said facilities were for processed patients only. And I'd been there 2 hours already. My mouth tasted like metal, my stomach churned violently. She sent me back to the corner to wait. The walk back felt like miles, and I had to stop twice to breathe through the stabbing sensation. Another hour passed before she called me up again. This time, she demanded to see identification. When I reached for my wallet, she suddenly grabbed my hijab and yanked it off my head. "Proper ID verification requires full facial visibility," she declared, holding my hijab as though it were contaminated. My hair tumbled down my shoulders. I felt more exposed than ever in public. She made me turn in a full circle while other patients watched. Some looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. The pain was worse. When I tried to explain this, she pressed brutally on my abdomen right where it hurt most. I screamed and doubled over. My knees hit the floor hard, but I barely felt it compared to the explosion in my gut. Imagine being the renowned surgeon who separated conjoined twins, only to have your own hospital betray you when you needed help most. Stripping off your hijab and ignoring your screams until your appendix ruptured. Humiliated and left for dead, Dr. Amamira Hassan refused to stay silent and uncovered a network of discrimination and corruption that endangered every patient. This is the story of how one woman transformed her pain into purpose and forced a broken system to change. She wrote something on her chart and said I needed to walk laps around the waiting room to prove I wasn't faking for pain medication. I managed 3 steps before the room tilted sideways. My stomach convulsed and I vomited bile onto the floor. The movement sent such intense pain through my side that tears streamed down my face. She stepped back, disgusted, and called for janitorial. Then she said if I couldn't control myself, I'd have to wait outside. I begged for the bathroom just to clean up. She said no. I asked for anti-nausea medication. She said no. I told her I was a doctor and I knew my appendix was about to rupture. Each word took enormous effort. That's when she screamed that I was making terrorist threats by claiming to be a doctor. Security grabbed both my arms and started dragging me toward the exit. "Go back where you came from for treatment," she spat as they hauled me outside. They threw me onto the pavement, just as my legs gave out completely. The impact sent brutal pain through my abdomen. Everything went black for a second. As I collapsed from pain, my old hospital ID tumbled from my bag. Chief of Pediatric Surgery, 2015 to 2020. The intake nurse picked it up, about to toss it aside when she saw the name, Dr. Amamira Hassan. The pen dropped from her hand. "Oh my gosh, you're her, the conjoined twin surgeon?" Another nurse gasped. I was writhing on the floor, appendix about to burst. "Get her to surgery now," someone yelled. 6 hours later, I woke up in recovery. The same nurse who tormented me stood in the doorway with the administrator. Her face had lost all color. The administrator asked if I wanted her terminated immediately. I looked at her a long moment. "No," I said finally. Not because I wasn't upset, I absolutely was, but because at that moment, I realized something. Crucial. Nurse Brenda had no idea what was coming. 2 days later, I walked back into the hospital via the main entrance. My surgical site still throbbed, but I kept my posture straight. The security guard who'd thrown me out recognized me immediately. His eyes widened. He stepped aside without a word. I made my way to Dr. Theodore Blackwood's office on the fourth floor. His secretary stood as I entered. Dr. Blackwood rose from behind his mahogany desk, tall, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses. We had worked together for years. I showed him photos I'd taken in recovery, my medical chart, the falsified temperature reading, the documented hysteria diagnosis Brenda wrote before my appendix ruptured. His jaw tightened as he scrolled through the evidence. He rubbed his temples, the liability, the publicity, the damage to the hospital's reputation running through his mind. He opened his mouth, but I held up my hand. I pulled out a folder, printed emails from staff members who'd witnessed the incident. 3 nurses, 2 orderlies, even a patient in the waiting room. They described Brenda's humiliation, denial of basic care, ordering security to remove me while I was clearly in distress. Dr. Blackwood read each statement slowly. His face grew graver. He picked up the phone to request Brenda's personnel file. It showed 3 previous complaints, all from patients who wore hijabs or other religious coverings, all dismissed as misunderstandings or cultural differences, all signed off by the same supervisor. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern, and the hospital had enabled it by looking the other way. Dr. Blackwood placed Brenda on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I shook my head. That wasn't enough. Not after what she'd done, not after what she'd been allowed to do to others. I told him I wanted to join the investigation. Access to all previous complaints, interviews with mistreated patients, full transparency. He tried to object, but I reminded him of my 5 years of service, the prestige I'd brought, the residents I'd trained. In my moment of need, his staff nearly unlived me because of the color of my skin and my head covering. The next morning, I arrived at 7. Brenda's shift started at 8. I stood in the lobby, watching the employee entrance. At 7:45, she walked in, coffee in hand, chatting with a colleague, and froze when she saw me. Her cup crashed to the floor, brown liquid splashing across the white tiles. I didn't move. Security approached her with a letter. Administrative leave. Effective immediately. She looked at me one last time, her face a mask of shock, before they escorted her away. Over the next week, I threw myself into the investigation, interviewed the 3 previous complainants, each with a heartbreakingly similar story. Delayed care, humiliation, dismissive treatment. Brenda wasn't going down without a fight. She hired a lawyer and filed a union grievance, claiming she was scapegoated for following protocols, accusing me of personal vengeance. Then the threats began. Anonymous notes in my hospital mailbox. My car tires slashed in the garage. Camera. Angles conveniently obscured. Timestamps corrupted. Someone was protecting Brenda, and they were good at it. I met with Dr. Blackwood again. This time, the hospital's legal counsel, Victoria Jones, joined us. They offered me a quiet settlement, enough money to cover bills and lost wages in exchange for an NDA and dropping the investigation. I tore the paper in half. Witnesses became reluctant, documents went missing. The supervisor who dismissed Complaints took early retirement. Brenda returned after her union's injunction, assigned to a different department, but I saw her smirk in the hallways. She knew she was winning. One afternoon, Dr. Theo Martinez, a resident on duty that night, slid a USB drive across the table. It contained the real security footage, Brenda pulling off my hijab, pressing on my abdomen as I screamed, ordering security to throw me out. More audio of her prejudiced comments, emails bragging about delaying those people. I copied everything, to Dr. Blackwood, the board, my lawyer, because now this was about every patient Brenda had hurt. 3 days until the board meeting. I prepared meticulously, but that morning my USB drives were blank, their files wiped. Dr. Martinez disappeared, transferred across the state with no notice. Panic rose in my throat as I stared at the blank screen. Then my phone buzzed. Heavy breathing, a whisper warning me to leave the hospital immediately if I knew what was good for me. The board members arrived. Without evidence, I had nothing but my word. They rescheduled the meeting. Outside, Brenda brushed past me in the hallway, her smirk deliberate. Over the next week, I pieced together new evidence with Dr. Kim, who risked her own career to send me screenshots, emails, messages, between Brenda and her network. I backed everything up in hidden locations. My car windshield was smashed. Police were skeptical. A photo of my sister's house arrived by text. Nice family, be a shame if they needed emergency medical care. My sister was fine, but terrified. Dr. Blackwood called me to his home at sunset. He'd uncovered financial irregularities, manipulated overtime records, destroyed documents, false timestamps. Brenda's network had stolen thousands. He warned me taking this to the board would be dangerous. They'd already received warnings. We spent hours organizing a case that exposed discrimination and corruption. That night, someone rammed my car on the street. I gave a statement. Without a plate or witnesses, there was little police could do. I retreated to a hotel under a fake name, then escaped through the bathroom window when security barged in without cause. I drove to Dr. Martinez's rural farm. His decades of experience helped refine the case. His wife, a former nurse, detailed how Brenda's network twisted hospital protocols. 3 days later, external auditors arrived. The hospital accounting system had flagged over $40,000 in fraud. I presented incident reports, witness statements, screenshots of racist messages, financial records, corrupt personnel files. The board voted to expand the investigation. Brenda's IT cousin, HR friend, and security boyfriend were all suspended pending outcome. Law enforcement was notified. Brenda confronted me in the hallway, hissing threats. "You'll regret destroying my life." Her lawyer dragged her away. The months that followed were a blur of union grievances, media coverage, protests in her support, and more evidence uncovered by forensic auditors. The hospital faced civil lawsuits, most settled. The pressure grew. Her security boyfriend was reinstated, then later exposed for blackmailing colleagues. Depositions brought new victims forward. An elderly Sikh man denied pain meds. A young woman in a niqab turned away with severe symptoms. Finally, prosecutors built a federal case for fraud. I testified. Brenda's defense crumbled under emails, financial records, and her own network's testimonies. The jury found her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Her associates faced probation or shorter terms. The hospital paid millions in settlements. Board members resigned, and Dr. Blackwood was promoted to CEO to spearhead reforms. He offered me a dual role: return to surgery and oversee diversity and inclusion. I accepted with conditions: authority to investigate complaints, a budget for training, and public acknowledgement of past failures. We implemented anonymous reporting, mandatory cultural sensitivity sessions, and patient advocacy programs. Over time, staff and patient satisfaction improved. Other hospitals adopted our model. Brenda was released early but barred from healthcare. I sometimes wondered if she'd felt remorse, but it no longer mattered. The system that enabled her was dismantled. My own scars healed. Physical ones quickly, emotional ones more slowly. But they gave me purpose. Now, new employees learn my story in orientation, how discrimination nearly cost a patient her life, and why we must treat everyone with equal dignity. Every day, I fight for equity. Every policy change, every training session, every protected Patient validates the struggle. The hospital where I nearly died became the place where I found my calling, not just as a surgeon, but as an advocate ensuring everyone who walks through those doors receives the care they deserve.